There we go. OK, so comme toujours, pour la plupart, je vais parler en anglais, mais si vous en avez des questions, posez les questions à ton langue de votre choix, and we'll get back to you. Between me and Andréane, we'll figure it out. OK, let's get right into the meat today. So we'll do a quick update on the Safe Sport program and sort of some of the implications that it's going to have going forward with high performance. We'll talk about some of the dashboard updates. There haven't been any updates because we haven't had any more competitions, but there will be after the World Championships and then after the U23 camp. I don't think we've actually got any updates to the national team plan, but we'll talk about what sort of is next on there. I've got a little update from the World Championship camp that's going on right now. And then we'll talk about World Championships. We'll talk about Melee Gala. We'll talk about the U23 camp a fair bit. An update on Elite Nationals in Winnipeg. A little bit about what's going on for next year in our planning so far. And then we'll do a bit of a dive into what we're doing data-wise and how we're expanding out from what we've done in the past year. And then a few sort of assorted notes from there. As always, especially with just a handful of people, feel free to jump in with any questions. The questions are really what we're aiming for, the dialogue back and forth. So a quick update on Canadian Safe Sport program. So this is really important that everyone understands. So all athletes on the nationally identified list and all athletes who are going to nationals in Winnipeg, all coaches who are going to nationals in Winnipeg will need to have this new Safe Sport certification in place. As soon as we get registrations flowing for nationals, and we'll talk about that in a minute, we will send out direct information to everyone on how to do that. But off of the links that we've got here, yeah, you can use this PDF that's attached if you've got access to the meeting presentation, which everyone should have. It's off the website, and we'll send out a note to everyone reminding them. But I would encourage everyone to go through this. I will admit, it is a bit of a slog, especially because every single one of you has done this before. But the Canadian Space Sport System is sort of where we've landed after OSIC and the respect in sport courses that we've done over the past 3 or 4 years. We've now landed on this. This feels like it's the final iteration that we will keep going with. So once we get through this, it should be a lot easier. And again, I apologize for the confusion, but all sports are going through this, and we do need everyone to be signed up and appropriately educated. If anyone has any problems with getting through that, please don't hesitate. Give me a call. I'm happy to help walk you through it. Most people have been able to get through it. And I will say our entire U19 team was able to get through this while they were over in Germany. So I shouldn't say that. If a U19-year-old can figure out how to use a computer, that's probably not a surprise. But if a coach for the U19 team can make it through, then that's always a nice thing. So we'll now that I've dug a hole with the coaches, we will move on. Selection dashboard. So like I said, we haven't had any major changes because we haven't had any more competitions. But after World Championships, I suspect there will be significant movement in the dashboard. And after the U23 camp, I suspect there will be movement in the dashboard. So I just want everyone to be aware that we need to be checking in after both of those activities to see, where rankings of athletes have gone, both with the categorization of athletes and with, selection for carding, for example. We'll have some changes in it. And then moving on to national team plans. So the next big thing Coming up, of course, is the World Championships, which start on the 4th. And the team is already over in camp right now. After the team gets back from the World Championships, we have a separate team that's going to go to the Melee Gala, where they'll be taking on Team USA. And then after that, we're into this U23 assessment camp. And we are at a point now where direct invitations will be going out by the end of today, to make sure that everyone who is on the registration list that was provided by the province or looked over by the provinces to make sure we weren't missing anyone. So those registrations will go out. And where we have information about like who each of those athletes' personal coach is, we will send that information out to the personal coach as well, but I can't guarantee that we've got those lists or got that link up. But we are looking to get as many athletes to that assessment camp as we can. We think it's a great opportunity. It's after Quebec provincials and it's after Ontario provincials. And I think for any athletes, especially the U23 athletes who are going to go to Winnipeg for elite nationals, I think this would be a great opportunity to do some preparation. So, okay, any questions about any of that rapid fire stuff so far? Okay, moving on. Okay, looking at the World Championship camp. So we got some photos back from our athletes and our coaches. So large international camp. We've got a lot of different teams there. It's been great sparring. The sparring started 2 or 3 days ago, and I think we're wrapping up in the next day. And just to say, like, I think the Canadians have been really well represented. We did have a handful of athletes who were not competing at the World Championships who were invited to that camp. And these are in particular athletes who we know were going to be going to the Melee Gala, and some athletes who we felt would just be great sparring partners for our World Championship team. And we're really hoping to have those athletes capitalize on that experience that they got at that international camp, even if they're not going on to the World Championships next week. So looking at our World Championships, so this slide is the same as last month. Just a reminder, our goal for the World Championships is 2 top 8 performances. It's early in the quadrennial. We've got plenty of time before the Olympics, and we knowing that we've got a bit of a younger team, we thought that this was appropriate. So this is a published criteria. And then, of course, we made our selections based on our priority 1 through 4 system. And then, of course, we've got the list of all of our athletes who were selected and how they got selected. So did they make the priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, or priority 4 criteria? And of course, it's just Vince and head coach Vincent and senior national team coach Samir El Mise who are there on the ground. Although we do have, I will say we do have more staff there. So there will be well, in camp right now, there's a physiotherapist and another coach. And during the time of the World Championships, we also have a physiotherapist who is working with the team on the ground. Okay, looking ahead to the Melee Gala. So have had a few changes here. And that's just because we had some athletes who weren't able to commit to the date. So I'm happy to have Gabriel, and I can't remember what his full last name is. So help me out here, guys.
Gabriel Ali Labrie.
Labrie.
Yeah.
So ALYLABRIE.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, merci. Important to get the right names out. And he is pound for pound. I just want to make sure I've got that right too.
Yes, with Jordan Mathieu. I think that's his club.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, so that's great. It is a very Ontario heavy team as we look at it now, but glad that we've got a Quebec athlete representing in there. The 2 coaches for that opportunity will be Dylan Martin out of Pan Am Boxing Club. So that's the local, the major local club in that area. And then Coach Yuli will be along for that as well. And now looking over at the U23 camp. So this is we're hoping to have a quite a large camp. We've had this as one of our largest camps in the past 2 years. And really critical to have this opportunity to have a high quality sparring camp for these U23 athletes, and have an opportunity for the national team coaches and all of the coaches who are there to do an assessment on the level of performance that we're seeing from each of these athletes and be able to create some strategies on what we're going to do in order to improve those athletes as much as possible. So this really is a setup for the next season, the 2026 season. And one of the things that we don't have written explicitly here, but is sort of in that third goal bullet point, which is to reinforce the need for an international style. We have put out invitations to some of our world boxing certified officials who've been current, so who are at the World Cups, who are at World Challenges, and fingers crossed, some who are at the World Championships. And they will be coming in order to help reinforce this understanding of what do we need to do in order to win internationally, as opposed to just being good enough to win our national championships. Because we do know that there is some stylistic change that needs to happen for quite a number of athletes. So the selection criteria that we had was pretty wide, because we are trying to get as many athletes as possible. So any athletes who are already categorized as emerging, they're invited. Any of the athletes who went to Brandenburg, they're invited. Certainly any of the U23 team who are going to Winnipeg, they're invited. U23 top two at our national championships that happened at the Quebec Open, they're invited. The top two U19s from nationals, they're invited. And then we've got specific invitations that went out to U23, U19, and U17 athletes who were at nationals. And then we've got additional invitations that went out, which technically are approved by the HPD, but really what we did is we went to the provinces and said, are we missing anyone? Is there someone who would benefit from this camp who is not already captured in this list? And I'm pretty happy with where we got to. If you are interested in double checking that list, it is linked here. So it is a publicly available document, right? So I would encourage everyone to take a look at that list. One of the sheets is just a list of all the athletes, and the other sheet groups up those athletes so you can look at them by province, or you can look at them by weight class. And what we are really hoping to have is, like I said earlier, is just a really high quality training opportunity for these athletes, without the burden of a competition going on, right? And we will have quite a number of coaches on site for that. And we encourage any of the personal coaches, all of the personal coaches who have athletes in that camp to also be there. Because we'd love to have you. But two, we need your input, right? We need input from you guys on what you are doing with your athletes. And, as we're trying to create strategies around building international success in athletes, knowing what those personal coaches are doing with the athletes and that intimate knowledge that those personal coaches have of the athletes will be critical. So we've now got a live registration link for that event. And like I said, it'll go out in a direct email to all of those athletes and all their coaches, assuming we've got emails for the coaches. We'd really like to get as many people registered for that as quickly as we possibly can. And as I said, we moved it a little later this year to make sure we weren't interfering with the World Championships, we weren't interfering with the Quebec provincials, and we weren't interfering with the Ontario provincials. My apologies to all the other provinces who might have provincials around this time. We can't think of everyone, unfortunately, but the two biggest provinces, we certainly wanted to make sure that we weren't excluding anyone. Okay, moving on from there. Elite Nationals. So the handbook is, I will admit, it is not as finalized as I would like it to be, but it is mostly final. And we have registration, which starts up live in 2 days. So I encourage everyone to take a look at the handbook because it's got information about the selection processes. It's got information about schedules, when we've got meetings, when the draw will be. All that is in there. And just a reminder, the registration for this nationals, because it is a province versus province, the registration has to be done by the province. And some provinces will register all of their athletes all in one go. Other provinces will probably allow individually selected athletes and coaches to register themselves through the website. It is password protected, so that password will be sent out to the provinces later today so that they have access. And I said, if a province chooses to go and provide greater access, then they're welcome to do so. Okay. The athletes who should have spots at the event include 2 athletes per province in each weight class, and then also last year's champions, so the number 1s from Sarnia, the number 2s from Sarnia, and if you were a U23 number 1 this year in Quebec, your province is being offered an opportunity for you to go regardless if you're in the top 2 per province. And then each province will have access to wildcard additional entries, subject to us having space for those athletes to attend. So we are really hoping to get, I'd say, 6 categories where we max out at 16 per category. That would be fantastic, right? We were able to get to sort of 2 or 3 last year, but I really think that we can get that bumped up a little bit this year. So we will also be seeding each of these weight classes. So the number 1 seed, sorry, I shouldn't say it that way. The seeding will be distributed by, if the number 1 from last year is in attendance, they get the number 1 seed. Then, if the runner-up from last year is in attendance, they get the number 2 seed. Then, if the 2025 U23 champion is in attendance, then they get the next seed that's available. And then we are going to attempt, and fingers crossed that we can do it properly, to make sure that in the first round, we don't have any province v province conflict. So we won't have an athlete from Manitoba against another athlete from Manitoba in the first round, because we don't want people traveling the entire country only to have a rematch of what they just did at provincials, right? That's not what we're attempting to do with the event, right? So we're working on how we can do that mathematically within the seeding system. But it could be that we, when we do the draw, we may end up needing to be aware of this and need to do some redraws, but we'll figure that out. And of course, if we have a very small number of athletes in a category, we may not be able to pull that off, right? I mean, if it's only, let's say, Quebec and Ontario in a particular weight class, then it's going to be really hard to make this happen. Okay. But we're going to try our best because, again, it's what we're trying to do here. And then, as I said before, all coaches and athletes must complete that safe sport education package. We've got 2.5 months to do it at this point. So I would encourage everyone to get on it. And we've already got 50 odd people across the country who've done it. So thank you to everyone who has. But we do need to push everyone through that system. Okay. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Any questions on preparations for elite nationals? Time for me to drink. Okay. Moving on. So looking at our national team plan for 2026. So all the bits and pieces I think are now in that document as we want to have them. What we are missing is we don't have the final schedule from World Boxing on when and where the World Challenge events are going to be held. And there are going to be 4 of them across the world as planned right now. But until we know where they are being held, it's going to be very difficult for us to say, we're going to send a team to the World Cup, and then we're going to send a team to the World Challenge. And we may have that, say, the first go to the World Cup. Maybe we'll have that team go to a World Challenge first and then to the first World Cup, because that way they can progress. We just don't know what all those links are going to look like yet. And so we've been pushing as hard as I think we can to World Boxing to say, hey, we need this information because we can't really make plans at this point. And for the national team, it's particularly vexing because we really need to get our training camp plans locked down like right away. And until we know where the competitions are, we can't decide which training camps we're going to go to. So we're waiting hard on that. And then 2 sort of philosophical changes that I want to highlight in that document. So 1, we are identifying all of the top club versus club international open competitions. So things like Les Ceintures, things like Eindhoven, things like the GB tournament. And we've got basically one of these available per month, where we have already reached out to the organizing committee and said, if we have Canadian clubs or provinces who are interested in going, can we make sure that they're well taken care of? Can we get information early? Can we, right? Do we have, like, we've been working on building that relationship because we, at the national team level, if we've got 4 World Cups in a year and 4 World Challenges in a year, that's plenty of work for us to take care of. We don't need to be going to that level of competition as well. And we know that provinces and some of our major clubs are looking for these opportunities to take athletes international. And because we've got this separation now with World Challenges being a national team versus national team event, and World Cups being a national team versus national team event, we anticipate that we are going to have fewer national teams showing up to these major World Open events. There will still be some national teams who go as a warm-up, but there will be fewer of them. So I think that opens up the opportunity for our top clubs and our provinces to go and have really good experiences at these events. Okay. When I talk about what to expect, in theory, World Boxing should have midway through next week an updated calendar for us. But given that we're right in World Championships at that point, I don't think they're going to have the calendar locked down, even though we're hoping that it would already be given to us. So we're probably looking at midway through September to actually get those dates locked in. But I will say, I was on vacation earlier this week, and I had an opportunity to go and visit our site for the 2026 Elite Nationals, so November 2026, in Cape Breton. And I got shown around the facility. I got shown around some of the local boxing clubs. I saw some of the local hotels and amenities that are available. And I think we are in good hands, and we've got a lot of support from the local community and some great support from Boxing Nova Scotia. So thank you to Boxing Nova Scotia for hosting me around while I was in Cape Breton. I really appreciate it. And thanks to the other members of the organizing committee. Okay. All right. So a new section in the presentation today that we haven't had in sort of the last year. So I want to talk a little bit about the different types of data that we are collecting on our athletes, and specifically in the context of how are we able to best and most accurately provide our athletes and our coaches with information that is going to allow them to make good decisions around how to train, what to train, which competitions to go to at what time of an athlete's development. And so the first big data set that we sort of started up with last year, and I would say pretty much everyone will have seen the reports that came out after Sarnia, where we were using a winning style assessment. It was conducted by our national team staff in order to create these coachable statements, right? So for an athlete, your pressure that you're applying to your opponents is good, but one thing that you might want to try is being better at attacking off your back foot, because we think that that's going to be a tactic that's going to help you going forward. That winning style assessment, we are doing those at each of the national championships, and we're doing those elite national championships, and we're doing those on all of our international competitions. So all of our athletes who were at the World Challenge, all of our athletes who were at the Olympics, all of our athletes who were at the World Cup, we are continuing to build out that data set, and we're continuing to look at what the best international athletes are doing and how would they score using our winning style assessment. Because if they're winning gold medals and they're not doing well on our assessment tool, then we've got a problem with the tool, right? So we continue working on those. I think those have been successful, and I think it's a good use of our resources in order to put those out. But there are three other types of assessment that we are now working on, and I'm going to explain one of them in detail, and the other two I'm going to leave for a little later. So the first is what we're calling our ELO ranking, and ELO doesn't stand for anything. Well, it probably stands for something at some point, but this is a type of ranking that had originally been used in chess competition, right? Like pawn to rook 5, right? On a chessboard. And it is a system for being able to figure out the relative ability of one player against another player and against another player. So if I look here within our meeting, if I play Andreanne and Andreanne beats me, and then I play Chris Cook and Chris Cook beats me, we know that I'm a weaker chess player than Andreanne, and I know that I'm a weaker player than Chris Cook. But through an ELO ranking system, we're able to get a best guess about exactly how good both Andreanne and Chris Cook are against each other. And obviously, if you've only got a handful of matches, it's not going to be all that accurate. But the more matches you have, the more accurate it can get. And we're able to link performances right from the people who win medals at the World Championships in the Olympics, in theory, all the way down to the national level, and in theory, down to the provincial level, in theory. And we've got a data set that was made available to us from On the Podium that looks at all of the top competitions in the world. And that data set has gone back all the way to 2013. So we've got a fair amount of data there. And we can see as an athlete goes and competes and wins and loses, how their ranking within this ELO system is looking over their career. And so I'm going to present a little bit of information about this later, but I will say there are two other types of assessment that we're also looking at. One is a purely analytical assessment that is using basically a system that captures video, and it gives us an idea of how many punches are being executed, and how often are punches being executed, and then are those punches making meaningful contact with their opponent. And this is all done by computer. It is completely hands-off from coaches. And is it 100% accurate? No, we know that it's not. But it's giving us essentially a report on any of the video that we've sent it, saying there were this many punches thrown. There was a punch on average every 5 seconds. The number of punches that made meaningful contact was 1 in every 10, or 10% of the punches were meaningful. So it's giving us some information, but what it does is it doesn't tell us why those were good, and it also doesn't relate any of that to whether someone actually won a match or not. It's just giving us this data set. And so we're playing with that a little bit to see, are there trends in the data? Do the athletes who win more often throw more punches? Probably. Do the athletes who win more often have more meaningful contact with their opponent? Probably, right? Do the athletes who win more fail to get hit by their opponent, right? Are they able to evade their opponent more effectively? Probably. So we're working at getting that information into the system, starting with top level matches at the Olympics and at the World Championships, and then we'll start trickling that information down as we can. And then the other assessment that we're doing is a Canada versus the top 16 athletes in a particular weight class. So if I use the example of Josh Ofori, right? So in the men's 75 kilo class, we've got now this data set available through OTP, and we can make a guess as to who the top 16 men's 75 kilo are in the world at this time. And we're setting up a system so that we can look at, has Josh competed against the number 1 ranked? Has Josh competed against number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, all the way down that list through 16? And if he has competed against them, was it a win or was it a loss? And also then, do we have a strategy against each one of those top 16 opponents? With the idea being that if you have competed against virtually everyone in your category at the top level, then that is a reason why we can feel confident that we can predict the outcome of that match. And if we've got a really good record, right, like 80% wins against the top 16, that also increases our ability to confidently say, we think we can make it with that athlete into quarterfinals or into semifinals. And of course, if we've competed against them a number of times, and even if we've lost against them a number of times, we've been refining our strategy. Well, we knew that didn't work. We know that didn't work. So we're now on to like plan C, plan D, plan E. And that increases, hopefully, our opportunity to win those bouts as well. So that's an assessment that we're still working at automating, because I really want to be able to have this as a push button, right? I mean, we can do this and put this together manually, but it takes hours and hours and hours. And what we want is the computer to be able to do it when we just hit one button. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the ELO system. So essentially, you earn points, right? And the points don't, they are not based on anything. It's just a number that's artificially created. But essentially, when you win, you earn points. When you lose points. And the amount of points that you win or lose depends on how good your opponent was. So if you have a win over an opponent who is really highly ranked with the number of points that they have compared to how many you have, you win more points. If an athlete who is really highly ranked in the system loses to an athlete who is really low ranked in the system, that highly ranked athlete will lose a lot of points, and the low ranked athlete who got the win unexpectedly earns a lot of points. But similarly, if you're both athletes who are at about the same current level in points, and there's a win or a loss or whichever, there won't be a lot of movement there, right? You'll sort of incrementally move up or move down. And as it happens, OTP is running this whole point system for us. They've got statisticians who are helping us. And they recommended that we just start everyone at their international debut. So when they show up in this particular data set, that we start them out at 1,500 points, and then they move up and down from there. So what does that look like? Well, here's some examples. And I apologies, because I know this isn't as big as we would like it. Let's do this. Let's look at, I'm all over the place here. Bro. Now I'm really buggered it up. There we go. Let's go. Let's bring Tam. Can I get Tam any bigger? There we go. Okay. So when I look at Tam, so when she started in the data set, that was back in 2017. And then she's got 3 wins in a row. So she's earning points. Then she's got 2 losses. So losing a few points, 2 wins. She actually had a win at one point where she lost quite a few points. And that's because she probably had that win over top of an athlete who was really, really low ranked. So it actually earned her a negative number of points. And then at that point, she basically had a few wins and losses. And then she starts this long streak of win after win after win after win, sort of building up points, building up points, building up points, until we see her at the games, which was her last competition within this particular data set. And then I compare her against the woman who won the 75 kilo class at the Olympics in Paris. And we can see she goes back even further. So her first competition within the data set, March 1st, 2014, started off with a loss, but then is slowly building up, with a few exceptions, building up points, as a major buildup of points at one juncture here in 2018, 2019, and then sort of is able to maintain and even build on those points for a while. And so this gives us an ability to have sort of a relative ranking of these athletes and say, you know, at the Olympics, this athlete topped out at just under 1,900 points. But Tam was actually pretty close to the same ranking going into that competition. And when I look at the athlete who came in, one of the 2 athletes who I think came in either, was it second or third? I can't remember, for Caitlin. Apologies, Caitlin, from, I think from England. She had a shorter career in the system, with fewer total bouts. And going into the Olympics, she actually topped out at about 1,650 points. So it's an interesting gap within the point system there. So this is a way that at a particular point in time, we can take a look at what is the relative ranking of athletes. And I would suggest that one of the things we're hoping to have eventually is be able to provide some guidance to say, I'll use Caitlin because she happens to be in front of us here, Caitlin Parker. So Caitlin Parker, if you're going into a tournament where everyone else is up at 1,900 points, maybe that's a step too far. Maybe we want to be targeting the best person in that tournament to be maybe 100 points ahead of you and have a number of people who are 100 points behind you. And we're also hoping that after a few years of the world boxing system, we'll get some feeling around, is there a certain number of points that athletes seem to have when they start having success at the World Cup, or they start having success at a world challenge? And we are also hoping that through effective data collection within Canada, we can start looking at a national level and at a provincial level, linking those athletes into this point system and being able to say, for an athlete to go to nationals and say, make it into the second round of competition, we would expect that they would have, let's say, 1,400 points within the system. Now, that's all arbitrary and that's all speculation about the future. And would I be comfortable making selection decisions based entirely on ELO points? Absolutely not. But it provides some level of guidance around how to adjust our planning around which athletes do we want to send where, and are we meeting up with the right level of competition within the world in order to have our athletes be challenged? Because one of the interesting things that we see within this data set is that even though we've got superstar athletes, all three of these women are fantastic boxers, and they still get losses, right? It's okay to get losses as long as you're getting a loss against the right type of person, right? Are you challenged enough that it's a good person to lose to if you can't get a win? And just because I have it here, just to see what the data set looks like in Wyatt's class. And we can see that the athlete who Wyatt lost to, so Sofang from France, quite a long career, right? Starting back in 2015 was his first bout within the data set. And he actually had quite a peak sort of in 2010, 2019, it looks like. And then dipped a little bit and then was building himself back up in order to be fully prepared for his performance at the Paris Olympics. And I contrast that with the actual gold medalist, who is a relative late starter. And I mean, he's a younger athlete, but he only shows up within this international data set in 2023. So he's got only 8 bouts, including the bouts at the Paris Olympics. And we can see that he has sort of made steady progression, although this bout that he won on June 2nd, he actually went down slightly in points because at that point he probably had a fight against an athlete who was at a significantly lower point level than he was. So even though he won, it didn't get him anything other than a win. So from a points point of view, not an efficient use of his time, but you got to win boxing matches in order to get selected for things in order to win medals. So, we're never going to pull out of a tournament because we're up against someone with low points. Anyway, I just wanted to present this to everyone to sort of get an idea of what systems are out there. This type of system is used by a number of sports internationally, particularly those sports where you need to have that head-to-head competition, right? Because of course, if you don't have a time or you don't have a height or you don't have an amount of weight that you need to lift, it can be very difficult, of course, to rank athletes. So this will be, we're hoping, one of the tools within our toolkit, but the primary way that we will be selecting athletes will always be, were you able to win something? Because winning has consequences, right? We want people to go for wins at whatever level of competition they're at. And I think this tool will help us make sure that we're putting those athletes at the appropriate level of competition for them to be successful. Okay, any questions on any of that? My hope is that we'll make virtually all of this data public, because there's nothing magical about this, right? It's all based off of publicly available wins and losses. So we would hope that probably all of the Canadian athletes will have access to certainly their own graph on how they're doing. And then we'll probably put together some tools that give everyone an understanding of, if you're at 1,600 points within, say, the men's 70 kilo class, how far away or how much higher was the Paris gold medalist or the World Championships 2025 gold medalist? How many points did they have, in order to give you an understanding of how many, like, what's the gap there, and how much time will it take to make up that gap if we're going to try to make up that gap. Okay, moving on. So our last couple slides here. Fix the, there we go, so we can actually see it. So just a reminder, so September 4th to the 14th, Elite World Championships. As soon as we've got the live stream links, I mean, it'll be up on World Boxing's YouTube channel, but we'll make sure that those are well published on our website, because we do want everyone watching, especially in cheering on the Canadian athletes. Then we've got the Melee Gala, September 25th to 28th is the tour. The actual competition is on the 27th. And then our assessment camp, of course, October 25th through November 1st in Montreal. Elite Nationals in Winnipeg, the 26th through the 29th. And like I said, the handbook is out and available for people to look at. Then our January national team camp. So we're still playing a little bit with dates on this, but we should have those dates shortly for everyone. And then into our World Cup and international schedule. Like I said, we're still waiting for some specific dates. We actually do know when the World Cups are going to be, but we're still waiting on the World Challenges. And I do have here the Youth Olympic Games international qualifier. So this is a bit of an odd, it's an odd duck, this competition. So the Youth Olympic Games happens at the end of the year, so the end of October into the beginning of November 2026. But the athletes have to be 17 years old or under at the time of the games. So it doesn't fit well within our existing junior C, U17, U19 youth categories. And World Boxing has shared what I would consider incomplete information at this time, because they're just not entirely sure how this is going to work. But they've shared that any athlete who is going to go to the Youth Olympic Games must appear at the Youth Olympic Games international qualifier, which we don't know the date for, and we don't know where it is. And we also don't know how many spots we will have available at that qualifier. And we don't know how many spots we're going to have available at the Youth Olympic Games. So if we find out in the next couple months that we're going to have, say, 2 spots available, only 2 spots available for the Youth Olympic Games, we are, and what weight categories, we're not going to we're not going to try to send, 10 or 15 kids to the Youth Olympic Games international qualifier. I just don't think it's a good use of our time. But we will have a presence, right? Because we do want people to be able to qualify to go to the Youth Olympic Games. And of course, we do have our World U19 championships again this year, but we don't know exactly when it'll be, and we don't know where it's going to be. But we do know that it's going to be much later in the season. It'll be either in August, September, or October of 2026. So selection for that will be easy. That'll be based off of our own U19 national championships occurring in March. Okay, and one reminder is I try to remind everyone every single chance I get. So we've got Commonwealth Games next year. We still don't know exactly which weight categories, although they're getting closer, but they deferred the decision again. But we do know that if you are interested in going, the selection criteria, which is already written in the NTP, will prioritize people who have won a World Cup or medaled at a World Cup, top 8 at a World Cup next year. And then if we don't have anyone selected through that criteria, then priority 2 will be down to World Challenge results and have you medaled at a World Challenge in a category that's represented at the Commonwealth Games. And if we don't have anyone selected off of international criteria, then we will go back to the results of the Elite National Championships 2025 in Winnipeg. So it's really important that if anyone has their heart set on going to the Commonwealth Games, you should better be in Winnipeg. And then after Winnipeg, you'll have an opportunity to sort of improve upon your qualification status by doing well at World Challenges, doing well at World Cups. But if you don't show up to the Elite Championships in 2025 in Winnipeg, the chances of you one being selected to a World Challenge or a World Cup team next season are lower because we'll have less opportunity for you. But also, if no one qualifies at that international level, we're going back down to those results from Winnipeg. So very important that everyone participates. Okay, and a handful of other notes. This is the same as last time. So we are looking at the possibility of going to electronic boxing books instead of the paper books. We're going to have a trial, I believe. We're going to have a trial of this actually at Nationals in Winnipeg. So it won't look any different for you guys as coaches and athletes, but it will look different from the officiating side because they will be using both the paper books and they'll be using an electronic book system in order to compare and see, are there any deficiencies in using the electronic system or not? And the sooner we can move away from the paper books, the better, with an understanding that there are certain situations where paper books are needed and are critical, right? I mean, if we as Canada use an electronic format, but athletes go to the United States or they go to a World Cup, they are going to need a paper book. We can't just show them our phone and say, hey, trust me, this is what my record is. So we will have to have paper books in circulation for a while, but we're really hoping to transition the majority of athletes away from those. And then if a paper book is needed, then we can have those produced and ready as a backup. Membership renewals, okay, those start September 1st. So you can start buying your 2026 membership through your provincial system. Most of the provinces are using tracking now, but you'll be able to start that September 1st. I really encourage everyone to make sure they've got their membership as early as possible, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're in a rush to try to do it. And It's just really nice for the provinces and admittedly us as well at the national office to have as many registrations in as possible, as quickly as possible, because it just makes it easier for us to plan our budget going forward when we know sort of what the membership sales are. Training log system, just to update it, it's sort of the end of the summer right now. Training log entries are low, but we really would like to see more training log entries by our identified athletes. Strength training programs, if anyone is interested, we do have that strength training program available online. We continue having people access it and purchasing it. It seems like it's working well for people. I haven't heard any feedback to the otherwise, so I'm pretty happy with that. And then recordings of these meetings. So check out the Boxing Canada YouTube channel. That's where we'll post this stuff up. And certainly if anyone has any questions, anytime, please don't ever hesitate to get in touch with me, get in touch with the coaches, get in touch with Andreanne, because that's what we're here for, is to try to help people out and get through those questions. So reminder for next month. Oh, have I not updated? Oh, I just didn't update should be September. That's embarrassing. So le 25 ou le 26 at our usual times. So those are available, and all of the previous update meetings and the previous slides are all available online for everyone. So, okay, and that's all I've got. So if there are any questions, fire away. I had a lot of questions last night, so that was good. Okay, with that, I'm gonna stop the share and stop the recording. And if there's anything else, let me know.